guys, how's it going? Luz here, and I am here to answer one of your questions. So Jeff, you had the question for Tuesday, so Troubleshooting Tuesday. If you guys have questions, put it in our thread every single Tuesday when we ask you, hey, what's going on? What do you guys have questions about? And we might take your question and turn it into a training that will be posted just here in this group for you guys. Or it might be posted onto our YouTube channel, which if you haven't already subscribed, go to your YouTube, just look for High Ticket Client Coach, and you will find us, and make sure to subscribe because we have new trainings coming all the time, and you also want to make sure that you're part of our newsletter. So without further ado, let's get into Jeff's question. Jeff, you asked, how many days per week should I post on Instagram, and how many days per week should I post on Facebook? Is Twitter good, or is it a thing of the past? Thanks. Okay, fantastic question. Now, what is the answer? How often should I be posting on each social media platform? My answer was, well, it actually really depends, because it totally does. So, what does it depend on? Well, the question for you, Jeff, is if we look at the 7 steps of profitability, right, we want to look at step number 2, which is where your product market fit comes in. So it's like, who are you serving? And what problem is it that you're solving? And after we figure that out, then it's like, where are your people hanging out? So the question for you, Jeff, is where are your people hanging out? There is no point in hanging out on Instagram if your people are not on Instagram. Where are your people hanging out? Where do you have access to them? And where is it that they're looking for your services, for your information, for your expertise? And so if I recall correctly, with Jeff, it's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be about his gym, or it's going to be about NLP work, right? So it's going to really vary. And so we want to be looking at attributes of our audience, such as age, gender. We want to see, potentially even income, to see where these people are hanging out. And not only where are they hanging out, but where are they going to actually learn more information and seek solutions to the problems that you help solve. So suppose it is going to be having to do with the gym, right? When it comes to the gym, you are going to have people who are local. At that point, I would say social media is going to matter, and the social media that's going to matter, it's going to be social media that pertains to the local area, cities that are around the city where your gym is, and having a more localized approach is going to be super important, right? So this is where your SEO becomes more relevant for someone like you versus someone who's just on the internet and they really have no location, at which point the strategy for them becomes actually different. Now, if we were saying it's something like NLP, then it's like, okay, NLP is a big space, right? NLP can solve so many problems. So then it's like, what is the problem that you're helping solve through NLP? Is it confidence? Is it sales? Is it more influence? Is it, trauma? Is it like, what's the specific problem that you're solving? And are you solving it for anybody in the whole wide world? We totally don't recommend that at all. Or are you, which is what we recommend, solving it for a very specific group of people that you have information about, where you can engage with them and find them on the internet, right? So let's talk about women. Middle-aged women. Middle-aged women love Facebook, right? So if your audience is women over the age of 40, those women are very likely to be hanging out on Facebook, right? And it also depends on the sort of solution that you're providing. If you have a problem like weight loss, well, there's probably going to be a group on Facebook where all of these people have congregated in the tens of thousands that you're going to want to access. Now, suppose you were looking to work with lawyers instead. Well, then you probably aren't going to spend too much time on Facebook, even though lawyers do come together on Facebook. You're probably going to find them on LinkedIn, where it's a really easy just search to find people who are lawyers. So the question is, who are you serving? What's the problem specifically that you solve for them? And then where do those people congregate in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands? And you have access to talk to and engage with these people, right? So that's the question for you, Jeff. So I don't agree with the blanket statement of you should post, 2 times on Instagram, and you should post 5 times on Facebook, and you should post 1.75 on LinkedIn. Absolutely not. Some of you guys have no business being on Instagram or on YouTube or on podcasts, and some of you guys are trying to get everywhere, and you don't need to, right? You are overwhelmed, and you don't have to be everywhere. You have to be the places where your potential clients are, where your community is, and where they're looking for you to engage with them and to solve their problems. So question for you, Jeff, is who are your people? What's the specific problem you solve for them? Where do they hang out? And then there is going to be a general rule. For that platform, you want to post about 1 time per day. If you just post 3 times per week, is that the end of the world? Absolutely not. What matters, and it really will change from platform to platform. Facebook is a newsfeed platform. What that means is, by tomorrow, it could be in 5 minutes, no one's gonna remember what you posted, right? It changes every time you're going through. So it's a great place to try something. If it works, you're like, oh, I learned from that. If it doesn't work, you're like, okay, not a big deal. Say on Instagram, your newsfeed now is a lot more important. It needs to look polished. It needs to have some sort of theme. People need to be able to look at your profile, and they need to be able to understand exactly who it is that you serve, what problem you solve, how, and know that you're an expert in that space and that you've gotten results. If you're on LinkedIn, it's more of a news feed, right? It's also just it changes every day, and how you build your authority on all of these platforms, it's going to be different. If you're on YouTube, I think people can see this differently. I personally think that YouTube is a little bit more like Instagram, where your presence there needs to be more polished, right? And so are there just blanket rules in terms of how many times do I post? No. Are there some general things that you should keep in mind? If you can, once a day. If you can't manage once a day, the world will not stop turning because you can't post once a day. You can do 3 times a week, but as long as you're creating relevant content that allows people to engage with you and that leads them to the right CTA, call to action, for them to know how to engage with you, then you're doing your job. You don't need to do much more than that. So hopefully that is helpful, Jeff. And if you have an additional question, just remember that every single Tuesday, we open up for you guys to ask us what your questions are, and we will answer. If we can answer that just on the thread, we will answer. And if it needs to be turned into a longer, lesson like this one right here, then we will do that as well. We take your questions and we use that to create better content for the YouTube, for the podcast, for the newsletter. Make sure that you go to our website, highticketclientonline.com, where we have an entire resource hub of free resources. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube. Make sure that you find me on Instagram, luzc.gonzalez. That's where our main account, really. So I said YouTube, we have a podcast, newsletter. Make sure that you sign up for our newsletter. If you don't have access to our newsletter yet, type newsletter below and I will send you a link, or you can also just go to our website and then under resources, you can sign up for our newsletter. It'll be somewhere on there. We have courses, we have programs, coaching programs. Now we're gonna be doing in-person events here in Austin, Texas, which is super exciting. We're having a potluck for the Texas community, for Austin, not all of Texas, but for coaches, consultants, service providers, and healers. And we are so excited. So again, keep posting your questions, keep posting your progress. We are here for you. Let's go.